here. We're live. It's Tuesday. I missed a couple. I'm sorry. Thank you for your patience. I was on a vacation week. My sister was visiting. And then last week I just had zero time. So I'm here. We're talking about, somebody asked me a question about vocal control and about projection. And I think that's a great topic today because this is something that plagues many singers the world over. It still plagues me sometimes because when we feel like we have to sing louder, which we often feel like we have to, which is the key of that phrase, we end up getting wobbly, or we end up just doing too much on a muscular level. And then we change the pitch, maybe not on purpose, right? But it ends up being either a situation where you're trying to do it and then it ends up not sounding the way you want it to, or it ends up being that you feel like you're stuck and you don't have the means to project, and it feels hard and it feels not possible for you. And you're left wondering why all these amazing singers can belt all the way and project to the ends of theaters and not need a microphone and all of those things. And the same happens with control, right? And my students know this, but I hate the word control, and I don't like using it in lessons because so often if I give the cue to control or push or make it louder, the thing that happens in your body when you hear that is squeeze, push, force, manipulate, overdo, right? Hello, Willie Thrills. How you doing? So we're talking about vocal control and projection and how a lot of times that can add up in our bodies to not the sound you want, over-efforting, over-pushing, or for some of us, it equals not being able to get past a certain point with your volume, or feeling like you're out of control and you're just letting random notes out and it's not the right notes that you want. And so many of us are stuck between these two facts. Like either you can't do it, you feel like you can't get out of this little box, or you try to do it and it, like, the volume is there, but the notes go all weird, right? So like you can't do it accurately, which again brings back the idea of control. So projection and control are very much intermingled. And a lot of time, for so many of us, it starts with the fact that we feel like we don't trust ourselves to sing any certain note. You know, like some of us don't have a problem. Some of us like feel like we can just sing any note, but some of us think that I can only sing in this little box, and outside of that is not possible, right? It's not in my range. I'm not even going to try. Or when I do try, it just comes out weird and wobbly and I don't like it. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you're getting compliments about your singing. That's amazing. Hitting high notes and you weren't even thinking about it. Look at that. So this is kind of related to what I'm talking about today, because when we feel like we have to work so hard to control and to project and to go higher in our range, that translates to more hard work, right? Because if you think a certain note needs a certain amount of pushing and force, and if you feel like it needs more, if you feel like what you have to give it is not enough for whatever reason, this may be a very valid thing that you're believing, then we approach it as a note that you feel like is not going to happen unless you work really hard for it. So that's what direction your body is hearing from you, right? Because you're the driver of the bus. The bus is not going to go without you. And if you believe you got to gun it to make this note happen, your body's like, okay, yes, sir, we are doing it, right? Pedal to the metal, really squeeze. I'm reaching for that high note. But as we've been learning in our sessions, if you allow, and if you take the pedal off a little bit, if you take your hands off the wheel, if you release your white knuckle grip a little bit, sometimes your body just knows what to do without you telling it to do all this extra hard work, right? And sometimes if we show ourselves that in other situations, we can make these same sounds. So for example, in the high note case, we were doing lots of like character voices, right? Ha ha, like a Mickey, like Disney princess, like ah, right? We have the physical capacity to make that sound that is needed for that note. But for some reason, when we go into singing mode, we have all these ideas and beliefs about how it has to be such hard work, and we have to really focus, and we have to know exactly what's happening with the technique, and we have to know exactly what muscles doing this and pulling this hard and all that stuff. We don't need all of that, you guys. We don't need it. You have such an incredible elite instrument inside of you. And that means sometimes we're trying to work it too hard, and you got to just get out of the way and push go and let it do its thing. And yes, of course, I'm not talking about not ever doing ear training or not ever doing brain training, not ever doing vocal training. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the moments when you feel like, I know that I want more power out of this, but I don't trust myself to give it the power without completely overworking and squeezing every muscle in my body. Because that happens to a lot of people. Honestly, believe me, it happens to me a lot. Because as we know, I'm a fighter. My first instinct when I'm approached with a conflict, aka a high note, a big belty note, a long note, a run, or something that feels like slightly out of my comfort zone, my first instinct as a fighter is to go balls to wall, let's do it, right? I'm gonna sing the shit out of this note. And so that direction of my body is squeeze, right? I could feel, you could see it in my face when I was just talking about it, right? We squeeze and we close and we engage and we overdo, right? We reach so high and we reach so far forward. We're trying to really like slam this note into the back of the room, whatever room you're in. But as we know from our work in vocal training, our voice can do that no problem, right? So when we're talking about projection, a lot of times we just have to go back to basics, like very basics. And by basics, I mean like, remember when you were a kindergartner on the playground and your friend was all the way over there and you needed to get their attention because you wanted to go play on the swings. What do? Hey, right? Your body automatically takes that deep breath. It releases your lower abs just as you need to. It opens up the vocal folds so that air can come in nice and easy. And then when you go to make sound, it doesn't over squeeze. It just goes, hey, right? Enough pressure, enough compression. It knows what to do to make that sound. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to know all the anatomy of the voice. You don't have to know all these things. If you want to, sweet, awesome. I have books to recommend. We can talk about it all day. However, if you're just trying to project and not feel stuck and not feel like you are about to make a wobbly note, your job is to remind yourself that you know how to do this already. You know how to control your voice. You do it all day long if you're speaking all day long. You know how to project your voice because you've done it since kindergarten. Yes, so have a little faith in yourself and remind yourself that you are knowledgeable. You have a human body. You have a voice. You know how to work that voice. And sometimes we just need to take away all of the beliefs that say that you don't know how to use your voice, or that you have to do more to make this happen, or that you have to really work hard because if you don't work hard, then it was a failure, right? If something's easy for so many of us, because we've been trained this way, we feel like, oh, that's not the thing. That's not it. I didn't do it. It was too easy, right? Let me know if that is you, because I was raised as a older child, an overdoer, an overachiever. I was in the IB program as a kid. Like, things were supposed to be hard, and I worked my butt off for those successes. And so now when things are too easy, I'm like, no, I didn't actually do that, right? You're kidding. Like, there's got to be another explanation, right? Like, I must have sang the wrong note or something. And I get people saying that to me all the time. They're like, no, that wasn't it. I'm like, yeah, that was literally the note. And you sang it with so much power. And you're like, no. That was like just talking. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, totally. This is all yeah, samesies. I've had many students take 6 months fully to really start believing me that they did something correctly, that they did something better than before, that they're not just doing it wrong because it was too easy. Like we get ourselves into such a spiral of I got to do more, I got to do better, otherwise it means nothing, you know. So just keep in mind that you have such control already. Most of the time, what I look for in people is the moments where they are trying to muscle a note, trying to over control and trying to over effort. And then our work is to get to the bottom of that, right? Like, why do you feel the need to over control and over push that note? Because chances are that's the instinct that is stopping you from singing the note that you want to sing in the first place, right? So the exact thing that you want is eluding you because you're trying not to have the thing that you don't want. Does that make sense? Right? So like it's a negative feedback loop, right? You're trying not to have the wrong note come out, that it needs to be louder, but in order to make that note come out correctly, you squeeze so hard that the note ends up not being correct in the first place. And so then you're just leading yourself down this pathway of fixing and fixing and fixing, and then it's too far gone. It's like every time I try to fix something in my house, I do too much. And then I'm like, well, now I've effed it up. There's too many screw holes in here. I just got to buy a new one, you know? So that's kind of the idea. You're probably doing too much. And only you can know, right? I've done a bunch of other lives about people who are overdoers and people who are underdoers. And this is directly related to like fight or flight, right? So you have to be the one to decide, like, am I overdoing? And you'll know it in your body, right? When you go to sing that big note, when you go to try and project, you'll feel that overdoing. You'll feel the over pushing and the over efforting. Or you'll feel just nothing happening, or not enough air, or you're just trying to just eke it out, but there's not enough power or space underneath you to make that happen. So it's up to you. This may not apply to you. You may not be an overdoer. You may be an underdoer, and that's okay too. But in either case, we got to go underneath that, right? And look into what is stopping you from just allowing this note. What is the reason why you're pushing so hard? And usually it's some version of, oh, I don't know if I can get that note, or I've messed it up a bunch of times before, or I don't know. I don't trust myself to sing it. It doesn't feel like it's going to happen. And so then we have to go underneath that, right? We got to keep digging, keep understanding why. And this is up to you. Like, you don't have to tell me any of these reasons. But what I do want to know is it the fact that you don't know what note you're supposed to be singing? Or is it the fact that you're trying so hard to get this right note because you're afraid of not getting it, that you are adding all these other layers of shoulds and I got to work harder and all these extra layers, right? And that's making the job heavier for you. It's literally putting all this weight on your teeny tiny little vocal muscles, and they don't deserve that. They need to do their job, and that means you got to take that weight off of them and let them do their job, you know, in whatever way that needs to happen in your body. So a lot of times that means not trying to get rid of this instinct, because it's really hard to get rid of this instinct of like, I got to do more. I got to work harder. So instead, we send it somewhere else. So that's why a lot of times when somebody's singing a big note, I'll have them bend their knees right before they do that, because the body needs to do something, right? You're not going to cure your need to control overnight. So you send that need to control underneath your diaphragm. So when you're bending your knees, you're actually engaging your abs. And you can try it right now. If you're sitting in a car or something, you can press your left foot into the panel where there's no pedal, you know. If you're standing up, you can bend your knees just a little bit, and that engages the abs. And that is where that power comes from. It's where it should be coming from, ideally, if you're singing a big belty note, right? Just normal singing, everyday singing, you don't really need all that extra oomph. But if you're trying to project, if you're trying to sing a big phrase that's a lot for you, you're going to need a little extra fuel and a little grounding. So sending that need to control out of here and into your abs can only help you find that consistent, nice, steady, powerful tone that you're looking for. Because number one, it's distracting these muscles from overworking. And number two, it's sending that efforting underneath to these big ab muscles that can handle it, and taking it out of these little teeny vocal muscles that if you push too hard, they will derail you, right? So if I'm singing a note and I go to press hard and my default is in here, it's gonna change the note, right? It's gonna change the pitch, like, ah, right? I'm pushing so hard from here because that's where I feel like my voice needs to come from. The pitch started raising up because I'm squeezing so much, right? But if I try and derail that and try and push into my abs, my obliques and my low abs especially, just pushing my feet into the ground, let's see what happens. This actually, I feel releasing a little bit as I go, because I know, I mean, even if I didn't know this, this is what my body would do. But as a vocal coach, I know that in order to make a louder sound, my chords have to come together more. And that means I have to release these muscles, the outer muscles anyway, and let the inner muscles pull them together so that they can be fully together. And that air, the faster air that I'm creating with my abs, which then affects the diaphragm, which then affects the lungs, that can help that louder sound be so much easier in here. And then you're working with these big muscles that help you stand and sit every day. They don't get tired as easily as these little muscles. So number one, send it somewhere else. Take it easy on yourself, right? Remind yourself that you already know how to do this by just like saying it out loud, right? So if that note that I was just doing felt like it was it was hard to make loud, I would just challenge myself or my student to say that same pitch as you're talking to somebody, right? The example I always use is like, you saw a friend you haven't seen in a long time, like, oh my gosh, right? Oh my gosh, hey, right? Oh my gosh, hi. You can feel your abs start to work a little bit, and you can feel this start to open up, and then you translate that into your singing. You just lengthen it a little bit. Oh my gosh. Oh, and then you have a nice steady note because the abs are helping. The fuel is coming from here, and the space is helping that just stay steady, right? You're not trying to press or squeeze or do any extra work in here because you know better. And the control that you're looking for is actually the opposite of control. The control that you're looking for is you relinquishing control and realizing that you already have so much of this in you innately and you don't have to do it so much. There are many other pieces to this. This is very simplistic. Keep this in mind, right? So on top of airflow and openness, those are the most important things. This is what singing is. It's basically airflow and muscle, just some combination of that. But on the other side of that, there's muscle training, right? And there's brain training. And if there is a run that you haven't done yet, you got to practice it. And you have to slow it down and make it easier for yourself. So when we talk about projection, that's one thing, right? That's more related to what I was talking about. When we're talking about control as far as agility goes, this takes some more practice. This is not quite as ingrained in you as well. So when we're talking about learning runs or like faster moving things, anything Mariah Carey ever did is full of runs, like that's just a nice easy run. That is just a straight down, but it didn't come easy to me to do that, right? Like if you tried that right now and you never do runs, it might feel a little hard and you're like, how does she do that? But that took practice and knowing how my brain works and how most of our brain works, we have to break it down and slow it down and start from baby steps. And so even doing something like that, it took me a while to do runs that were that fast, So I would have to start with that much slower and just think of it as like a stair step down, right? Ah, ah, And then as soon as I feel confident and like I'm not squeezing, I'm not over pushing, my abs are helping me out, keeping that airflow nice and steady, then I can start going a little faster and a little faster. So, ah, ah, ah. And just so long as you're keeping an eye on it, if it starts to get a little muddy, that's usually your sign that this is trying to get involved and trying to do more work than you feel like it needs to. Then you know it might need to. So when you're trying to do these runs and you're trying to have the control, that I use control like this all the time. It's not that I never use it. That word, as I was saying at the beginning, often inspires a lot of overdoing and a lot of grabbing in people's bodies. So I just want to give you a pass right now to let go a little more. And to, as you're working on a run or something, we're talking about giving yourself space to learn. If it's something that you've never done before, why expect yourself to do it now perfectly at tempo, right? Give yourself the space to take it down 5 notches. So many of us only give ourselves 1 or 2 notches down, and we're like, I should be able to do this. And then that gremlin comes back and it's like, you should be better than this. You got to work harder to make it happen. But really, the answer is often work less hard. Take it down 5 notches, because that's how your brain works. Your brain is not going to feel safe to learn this new skill if you are pushing it 3 levels higher than where you are at, right? You're just going to end up giving yourself judgment every time you can't do it. And that, guess what, does not make you feel like you're in a safe environment to learn. So you have to treat your nervous system as you would want other people to treat it out in the world, right? Because you're the one that interacts with your nervous system the most in the world on a daily basis. So keep that in mind. Give yourself so much more grace than you think you need. Take the pressure off, right? Go really, really slowly. Take a whole day to do the run at this speed until it feels like you could do it in your sleep. Then maybe tomorrow you speed it up a little bit. You speed it up a couple BPM, take your time. But we want to make sure we feel safe before we move up, because this is where that control gremlin comes back in. If you go too fast and you start to mess up again, it's not your fault. You're just trying to go too fast, right? You are safe at this level. Now you're at an edge and you're trying to get better and better. And it takes time to get better and better. So when we're talking about agility and control, hi Tina, we really have to give ourselves the grace of not forcing ourselves to do it at the level we want to do it. We have to give ourselves the grace to do it at 3 or 4 levels down from where we think we should be, because then we'll give ourselves a good environment to feel safe in. Like, if I can't do this run at 100 BPM, then why would I try and do it at the 120 that it's supposed to be, right? So I'm going to take it down even more, and I'm going to try it at like 80. Give myself some props, right? Give myself some time where I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. I killed that. Okay, now I'm feeling good. Now I'm feeling safe to move it up, right? And then I move it up to 85. And then I move it up to 90. And so every time I'm making sure I feel safe, because I know how my brain works and I know that it does not learn well when I'm not feeling safe, right? It's good to have an edge and to push yourself and to challenge yourself a little bit, but don't throw yourself in the deep end, because then your nervous system is going to be freaking out. It's going to think, I can't survive in this environment. I got to back out. I got to peace out, So I think that's something we don't often think of, right? So many of us are so hard on ourselves and we just think that that's the norm, right? So when we're talking about vocal control, so much of this energy is, it's so grabby and forcey and manipulating and judgy. Judgy is the thing, because we all have that gremlin inside of us thinking, you got to do better, you got to do more, you got to push harder, especially when it comes to singing. So give yourself more space to take the pedal off, take your hands off the wheel, and then give yourself some safe moments so that you can say, yes, I can do this. And Now I'm going to try and step one little toe outside of my comfort zone and try it just a little faster, right? Same thing with projecting, as we were talking about before. Like, it goes the same with like big high notes or big belty notes. Like, we don't want to try and go, to the end of a football field if we have not been doing that, right? We want to remind ourselves that, like, okay, maybe I move my target from 10 feet in front of me. Maybe I'm trying to get the sound now to 15 feet in front of me. Maybe I'm trying to get the sound now to a person that's 20 feet in front of me. So give yourself the space to take it slowly, because that's how we learn the best. Yes, push yourself. Yes, grow. Yes, do this brain training work. However, the control and the projection that you're looking for is not going to come easily to you if you're always in this fight or flight mode, right? It's not going to come if you're always in, oh, I can't do it mode. You have to be the one to recognize when you get frustrated and when you're trying to do something that's maybe 3 steps too much harder than you are used to doing it, and take it back, right? Give yourself the benefit of the doubt that maybe you can do it at this level instead of this level, right? And then give yourself the space to work through the levels on the way to that. It's all about how we approach things. It's all about how you perceive the note that's about to happen. It's about what you're doing before that note that will influence the note that you're talking about, the note in question. So if you have this big belty note coming up and you're singing the lines before it and you feel yourself start to tighten up because, oh God, here's that note that's coming up. Notice that. Notice what's happening. Don't judge and be like, okay, I know better. I know the way that I'm going to get that note is to let go, to get the feel from underneath and allow in here, and remind myself that I have done this my whole life, right? I know how to make a big belty note because I've done it since kindergarten. And you probably practiced the stuff that I talk about, which is bringing it from speaking into singing, unshaming the fact that singing can be as easy as speaking, taking down that wall in between speaking and singing, and the fact that you know how to do this, you know how to make noise. That's all singing is. It's just making a very specific noise on a melody. So give yourself grace, is what I'm saying. Give yourself so much grace, more grace than you think you should, because that is a universal truth, is practically nobody is giving themselves as much grace as they deserve and as other people would give them. So that's my TED Talk for today. If you're looking for control, if you're looking for power and projection, if you're looking for agility, give yourself grace. Number 1, know that you already know how to do so many of these things that you're looking how to do. And know that the thing that you're trying so desperately not to have happen is going to happen the more that you try and force that thing not to happen. Because in singing, so often, it is that letting go that makes it happen, right? Your beautiful mechanism, your beautiful instrument in here knows what it's doing. You got to take your hands off the wheel a little bit. I had, a couple years ago, I had 2 students at the same time who were pole vaulters. And both of them would do this thing. And one of them said to me, like, oh, I realized I've been coming to singing just like I come to pole vaulting, right? Like, this is a sport where you run as hard as you freaking can and you put the pole down and then you squeeze every single muscle in your body so that you get over this pole, right? What a crazy thing. And so he was coming at these big high notes like that, like, oh, here I go. And that is so much squeezing. It's so much over pushing for singing, right? Like, yes, if you got to vault your whole entire body over a 20-foot pole, please, for God's sake, squeeze all the muscles in your body. Do what you need to do to make that happen. But these teeny little muscles, that's not how they work. You got to give it the right directions. So if you're saying, here's a big high note, I got to squeeze the heck out of it to make that happen, and you have worked with your voice at least a little bit before, and you have evidence that singing higher notes takes more allowing, more opening, more releasing in here, and maybe sending the control down here, as we were talking about before. You have to fully train your brain to think about these things differently. It took me so long to learn that singing high notes means try less, right? Of course, you're trying, but from down here, not from in here. I have to not reach so hard and send that energy down, send that energy into a, I got this kind of energy instead of, oh God, I hope I get this note, because that equals squeezing, and that is going to lead to the squeezing and the squeaky high notes that you're not wanting, or the muddy runs, or wobbly notes as you try and get louder. That's exactly what those things will lead to, is the not trusting yourself that you know how to do this. So yes, vocal training is all about brain training and training yourself to do something different than what you think is necessary for that to happen. So often we get into these patterns of like, I'm gonna sing, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna be the biggest, loudest singer ever, and then we realize, oh, I gotta stop, because that's not working for me. Okay, I gotta go. Love y'all. Thanks for hanging out. I don't really have anything to promote right now, so I'm not gonna do it. Okay, love you. Have a great day. Bye. Boop, boop.